Okay, good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we are starting on the bottom of Samech Zayin Amud Beis at a new Mishnah of Hamocher Samerchatz, and we'll be learning to the bottom of Daf Samech Ches Amud Beis at the Mishnah there. So a little bit of ground to cover. The beginning is pretty fast and pretty easy. The last Amud has a little bit of nuance and complexity in it, but nothing that we can't navigate. Let's get started. Hamocher Samerchatz. We've been discussing different things that people sell. If I'm going to sell a merchatz, which is a bathhouse, lo machar, what isn't included? Because remember, that's what the whole parak is about. Lo machar es hanisarim, you didn't sell the boards. V'es hasapalin, which is these kinds of water receptacles. V'es habalonios. Balonios is either like a curtain of some kind or towels, something like that. And that's what's excluded, is the nisarim, the sapalim, and the balonios. However, if I, the seller of the merchatz, say, I'm selling you this merchatz with everything in it, then then all three of these things are then sold, namely the nesarim, the sapalin, and the balonios are then included in the sale. However, no matter what, namely, even if you say hi v'chol masha b'socha lo machar lo es hameguros shel mayim, that would exclude the tanks of water, again, that which feeds into that which is boiled to create the heat on the base of merchatz. Below es otzaros shel eitzim, and the storehouses of wood, because of course the fire is used to heat the water, that's also excluded, even if you say hi v'chol masha b'socha. So now we have our parameters. We have three buckets. We have, if your language is stam, then all that you get is the merchatz without the nesarim, sapalim, and balonios. If your language is specific and inclusive, hi v'chol masha b'socha, then you do get those three. But you never, even if you give explicit broad language, you never get the meguros shel mayim and the otzaros shel eitzim. That brings us to the end of the Mishnah. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis have taught us in a brisa, very similar to our Mishnah. Hamocher es hamerchatz, if a person is selling a bathhouse, machar es beis hanasarim, what is included, right? Our Mishnah was excluded. What we're seeing over here is what is included in the sale is the building of the nesarim, of the boards. V'es beis ha-yikamin, the building, this was a building that basically held like head wraps or turbans. There's some type of thing that they'd wear on their heads. V'es beis ha-sapalim, and this is the room that holds the jugs or tanks of water, v'es beis ha-vilos, and as well the structure that has all of the towels in it. Aval, that's what's included in the sale. Aval lo es ha-nesarim atzman, you get the room of the nesarim, but not the nesarim themselves. This aligns with our Mishnah. V'lo yikamin atzman, and as well this doesn't include the yikamin, which we had said was some type of turban. And v'lo sapalin atzman, v'lo vilos atzman, you get the rooms, but you don't get the items. Uvizman she'amar, this brisa adds that if we are in a time, if the agreement, I should say, is that it's bizman she'amar lo hi v'chol masha b'socha, then harei kulan mechurin, then seemingly even the items that belong in these rooms are considered to be sold in the sale. However, last line of Samach Zayin Amud Beis, ben kach u ben kach lo mochar lo es habrechos hamesapkos lo mayim. The pool receptacles, the cisterns that feed the water to the place where it gets boiled is excluded, even if you say everything is included. And that's true as we turn to the top of the next page. Bein bimos hachama, bein bimos hagshamim. That's true no matter what the season. The difference between yemos hachama and yemos hagshamim is highlighted in the Rashbam on the top line. Dibur hamaschil, bein bimos hachama, shehein muatin. All right, we live in a different culture, but back in the Middle East, the rain in the summer is very rare. So the reservoirs of water were very low. So I might have thought that bimos hachama, that because the reservoirs of water are so low, that pasha they're included in the sale. It's okay. It's so close to what we're talking about. Okay, there's no water in there. It's just a tank. So we said no. Bein bimos hachama, bein bimos hagshamim, and also as well, just adding to the mix of things here, the low base kinos eitzim. And as well, even if you were to say hi v'chol masha b'socha, you would not get the room of all of the wood.
I think the opposite. Like, that's when they need a lot of the most, if it's more pressure.
The point is that the water is so minimal, like it's almost zero. So they view the tanks in general as separate of the sale. So let's just go back to get the language correct. What did we say? We said ben kach u ben kach. What is not included is the cisterns that hold the water that feed the bathhouse. Ben bimos hachama, ben bimos hagshamim. Even if shehein muatin, and the Havamina, the Rashbam writes, the sal kadai tachamina live tilu gabe hamerchas. Just make it batel. You're right in regards to the need of liquid. That's true. That's true. But the Havamin of the Gemara, and again, V'sal Kedai Tachamina, that language already is a bit of a remez as to what's going on here. The Havamin of the Gemara is, of the Brisa is, and the Rashbam explains it, is that we might have thought that it's such a small amount of water. No, it should be batel to the kli. No big deal. Even though bittel doesn't work that way, by the way, in Lumdus. Bittel is usually when you have, things that are a mixture, it's usually not done like this, but that's what the Rashbam writes. I hear what you're saying in regards to needs of water.
We did, in terms of sales, we did have that idea of when the big thing takes along the small.
That's true, but this language sounds like bittel. Sounds like
well, in other words, because you're selling the free, you're selling the merchats, whatever little bit of water.
We're talking again about the cistern that feeds the pot, right? That's the Havamina. Live to Lugabe Americhans. Yes, Dad.
Is it possible that the bathhouse was ever used by men as a mikvah?
That's a great question. These Beis Hamerchats are typically like steam baths or like shower places. The mikvahs were built differently. This would not be a kosher mikvah. This is standing water underneath. Actually, when I was in Israel somewhere, I can't remember, they had these kiln-made bricks that were hollow. And the air would just go up the middle. They would make a stack of them, and the air would go up the middle. So then they would line the floor under the wood with these bricks, and then the steam would run through. It was brilliant. I mean, we're going back thousands of years, just brilliant construction. And they had to make it that the floor wasn't so hot that you couldn't even step on it. Like, it was done b'chachma rabbah. Like, no, everything's electronic. 105 degrees, 108 degrees in the mikvah in Pratt. This one is 110, 100, whatever the numbers are.
It's not killing people.
Yeah, I'm sure people died all the time. Not all the time, I'm sure.
Yeah,
you could kill someone. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they had their ways of doing it. It was a chachma. It was done well. But no, this isn't a mikvah. It wouldn't have been a kosher mikvah.
Didn't have in-home showers.
They also didn't have in-home showers. It's like in Camp Moshava where they had like the bathhouse, Okay. So then the Brisa continues on the top of Maseches Amud Aleph. V'im Amar Lo Beis Hamerchatz V'chol Tashmishav Ani Mocher Lach. Super broad language. Then Kulan Mechurim. Even the things that we had previously said wouldn't be sold with the language of Hi V'chol Ma'aseh B'socha. Now we're learning stages of inclusive language. The first case was Stam, and we said that there were things that were left out. Then on the bottom of Samach Zayin Amud Beis, we broadened and said, what if I sell it to you when I say he? I'm going to say the Beis HaMerchatz V'chol Ma'aseh B'socha. And then here we see an even broader language, which is Beis HaMerchatz V'chol Tashmishav Ani Mocher Lach. And we might have thought in our Balabatish minds that there isn't much of a difference between them. But halachically speaking, there's a very big difference between them. This would be a great sugya to learn in the Rishonim as to why is this any different than the previous one. We're not going to do that, but that is what the Gemara says over here. Okay, a little bit of a story, kind of. Hahu de Omar le lechavre. A man says to his friend, Beis habad v'chol tashmishav ani mocher lach. He said, I'm selling you an oil press and everything that comes along with it, all of the tashmishe kelim. And one thing that was true was that Hav Yahanhu Chan V'asa Avroi, there was a store on the outskirts, Dahabushatchu Behu Shumshami, and they had laid out sesame to dry to then put it in the olive press. Now, this store wasn't typically used for anything olive related. They just happened to have a stash of sesame, and the guy's like, let me make a couple of bucks. I'm going to dry out the sesame. I'll go to the press down the street or whatever on the same field. I'll go hire, Karesh Press Company, and they'll press the sesame to get sesame oil. Now I go to Jewel, I buy a whole jug of sesame oil, Shalom Al Yisrael. They had to make it. So says the Gemara, how does this work? When we say b'chol tashmishim, that everything that I sell you from the Beis Habad is included, does it include the store on the property that only sporadically and randomly presses or wants to press sesame seeds? Because now it's shaykh to the Beis Habad. If it was just a makolet, it wouldn't be included. But now they actually have tried to dry it out the shumshami. So what do we say? So asa lakame de Rav Yosef, Amar le tanina. Rav Yosef said we have a brisa. Im Amar quote Beis hamerchatz v'chol tashmisha v'ani mocher lach hare kulan mechur. It seems from the brisa at the top of this page that we just learned that there is a super broad inclusive language of v'chol tashmisha. So then it sounds like the store should be sold. Amar le Abaye, how can you say that? V'hatani Reb Chia ein kulan mechurin. Not everything is going to be sold. Amar Rav Ashi chazinan, we check. I amar le beis habad v'chol tashmishav v'ilein mitzranaha, and these are the borders, and then the store is within those borders. Then kani, then the store is in fact sold. But that's adding in a border. We're not just saying v'chol tashmishav. We're actually talking about borders. And v'ilo lo kani. And if the borders are not included, then even if the store sells shum shemi that's drying out to be pressed, afal pi that the store has an aspect to it that is about the press. Afal pikain, the store will not be nikne, will not be kona in that case. That brings us to yet a new Mishnah of a similar tone, but about a different topic. Third of the way down on Maseches, but Aleph HaMocher Es Ha'ir. You got to be pretty wealthy to do that. But let's say you owned a city. I guess the equivalent of today would be to own an island, which some people do. Anyone in our shiur own an island? I don't know. Could happen.
Gilligan.
It could be. I don't know if Gilligan owned that island. I think he got stuck on that island. But it's been a while. So says the Mishnah, Mocher Es Ha'ir. Let's say that I own a city and now I'm selling it. So what is included in the sale? Mochar batim, you've sold the houses, boros sheichun u'ma'aros, and you've also sold, because the ear is a very broad term, you've sold pits and other types of dugout places. You've sold merchatzos, bathhouses, vishovchos, you've sold like the chicken coops. You've sold the beis habad and the olive presses. Beis hashlachin, this is going to be a machlokes in the Gemara, a complicated, nuanced machlokes about what beis hashlachin means and how it relates to the seif of our Mishnah. Aval, all this is the Tanakama, so that's what's included. Aval, lo sametaltalin. Anything that's portable, anything that's movable is not included in the sale. So let's say I'm selling you the city of Chicago. You get all the physical structures, no problem. What you don't get is anything that's movable. No couches, no furniture, nothing at all. However, let's make the case a little bit more nuanced. Ubizman she'amar lo, if I'm selling you Chicago, here are the keys to the city, and I add in, he v'chol ma shebesocha, then afilu hayu ba behema va'avadim hare elu mechurin. Then even if there were animals and slaves, then they are mechurin. Those things are seemingly considered metaltalin, which the Gemara is going to pick up on. We don't typically assume that an eved is metaltalin. We typically assume an eved is karka, and we're going to discuss that as our first little sugya. All of this is the Tanakama. However, and again, this is going to be cryptic right now until we get into the belly of the beast here, but Rashbag Omer, HaMocher Es Ha'ir, Mocher Es HaSantar, that if a person sells a city, he's also selling the santar. And if you look in the Rashbam, which is 20 lines from the bottom of the page, 5-6 lines into the wide lines, he just says, B'Gemara Mefarish. If the Rashbam tried to write out what the Gemara was saying, this daf would have been 3 lines. It's a complex Gemara that we're about to learn on the next Amud. But let's start out with the easy stuff first. Halfway down at the open of the Gemara, Amar le Rav Acha, Berei de Rav Avia le Rav Ashi. He says to Rav Ashi as follows, Shamas mina, there's something unique that we're learning from this Mishnah. Avda kimitalta ladami. It seems from here that an eved is metaltalin. Because if you look back up in the Mishnah, what we see is that, you're not allowed to have metaltalin. But if I say when I'm selling the city, hu v'chol asher that's inside of it, then we get that which we said you couldn't get, which is metaltalin. What were the double samples? The 2 samples were avadim, and what was the other one? Behema. So those things are metaltalin. And de'i kimekarka dami, we know that our Mishnah is making an equivalence between an eved and metaltalin, because had it been that an eved is similar to karka, then nizdavan agav mata. Well, all the city, all the karka pieces were purchased already simply by the sale of the city. That's the ratio of the Mishnah. Elamai, it must be that that we must be saying that an eved is metaltalin. It says the Gemara, Elamai, what's the other option? Avda ki metaltalatami. If what you want to say is that an eved is like metaltal, and listen to this gorgeous diuk, says the Gemara, my afilu. Take a look back in the Gemara. We had said in the middle of the Mishnah, ubizman she'omar lo hi b'chol ma'aseh b'socha, afilu hayu ba avad behema v'avadim. The language of afilu. Why did you say afilu? Afilu means I might not have thought, but now I need to include. So says the Gemara, what must be the case? Shiny, bein metaltala denied, mi metaltala delo night. There's a difference between metaltalan that walk on their own, which is avadim and behema, and metaltala delo night, which is things that are not alive. My kitchen table is not walking anywhere. Much to my sadness, I wouldn't mind if it went. Then the Gemara says, afilu tema avda kimakarkadam. If you're going to say that your svara is that there's a difference in metaltalin that walk and metaltalin that don't, namely, there's a difference between an eved that's metaltalin that walks and my kitchen table that won't. So then I could say the same thing about karka. Shiny bain mekarka denied, le mekarka de night. I could say either way. So there's not really a lot of clarity at the conclusion of this Gemara, of this little piece over here. But what seems to be the case is that it's possible that that's what our Mishnah meant, but lav dafka. That brings us to the two dots, 2/3 of the way down, by the Shita of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel taught us a new term, one that we had not yet seen in our Mishnah, or I don't think in Shas actually, but I could be wrong about that. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, hamocher es eir, mocher es santar. My santar, asks the Gemara. What is he talking about? So says the Gemara, hacha, over here, whatever over here means, it sounds maybe Eretz Yisrael, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. So says the Gemara, hacha, targimu bar machvenisa. This is talking about a person who has a job of being an expert in boundaries, in property boundaries, right? A surveyor, whatever. Let's call him a surveyor. I don't know what the actual title is. So that what that means is that unlike the Tanakama, who says that this surveyor is excluded from the sale, Rashba Gomer hamocher es ha'ir mocher es santar, that we now are including this in the sale. Namely, when I sell you a city, what comes along with it is a surveyor. That's Shita number one. However, Shimon ben Avtulmus, Omer, Bagi. He says that the word santar is a reference to Bagi. We've seen this language before numerous times, which is a reference to fields. It's a reference to fields that are far out. And what he means to say is that even though they're far out, Rashbag says when you sell a city, those things are included. Now, Man de Omar bar machvenisa, a person who says that the surveyor of the land comes with the purchase, kol shekain bagi, all the more so he would say that the property would come with. However, man de Amar bagi, according to the one who says that the santar is a piece of property, aval bar machvenisa lo mizdavin, but the surveyor himself does not come along with the sale. So there's a little bit of nuance here as to what actually is going on in our Mishnah. And just to keep things super clear, our Tanakama was of the opinion that a stam sale excludes metaltalin. A sale with more specificity includes metaltalin, even avodim and behema. And the Rashbag says that even the santar is included. And a santar is either a surveyor or it's unique lands that are at the outskirts of the city. Says the Gemara, we need to figure out what the truth is over here. What does the word santar mean? We're not sure yet. Tanan, we have a Mishnah, our Mishnah. We said in our Mishnah, Beis Habadin u Beis Hashlachin. That's what we just said in our Mishnah, right at 1/3 down on the page. We said that when a person sells a city, what's included is a Beis Habadin and a Beis Hashlachin, the olive press and the Beis Hashlachin. We don't know what the Beis Hashlachin is. So it says the Gemara, Savrua, there's going to be two versions of this, so follow along. Savruha, we might have thought, my shlachin, when the Mishnah said the Beis HaShlachin is included in the sale, what did it mean? Bagi, it meant land. Tichsi v'sholech maim al pnei chutzos, that water will be sent on all of those outer fields. And if that's true, that shlachin in our Mishnah means bagi, means fields, then bishlama lemanda amar bar machvenisa, I understand if the word santar means bar machvenisa, because then here is the machlokes between the Tanakama and Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Amar Tanakama bagi mizdavni. The Tanakama wrote that the Beis HaShlachin is included in the sale. So good. His Beis HaShlachin refers to fields. And bar machvenisa lo mizdavin. And the surveyor he left out. And then v'asa Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel lemeimar afilu bar machvenisa nami mizdavin. then we understand their machlokes. Super clear. It's actually what we initially thought, which is that they're just arguing about the surveyor. Elalamanda Omar Bagi, but according to the one who holds that the santar is Bagi, then we have a big problem. Tanakama Nami Hachi Omar. If what you're saying is that the word santar means land, so then the Tanakama said the Beis HaShlachin is land, and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said santar is land. So then they're saying the same exact thing, and there's no chiddush in Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, and that can't be either. Tanakama Nami Hachi Kamar. So says the Gemara, you made an error. Misavris, that my shlachin, that when the Tanakama wrote Beis HaShlachin, it was Bagi? No. Lo. My shlachin, what did the Tanakama mean when he said Beis HaShlachin? He meant Ginunaisa, he meant gardens. Where do we see that shlachin is talking about gardens? Shenemar, a pasuk in Shir Hashirim, Shalachayich Pardes Rimonim. Shalachayich, your Shalachayich, which is the word we're trying to define, is Pardes Rimonim. It's these types of gardens that include an orchard and that include Rimonim. So let's be super clear. If Beis HaShlachin of the Tanakama means gardens, Aval Bagi, but the Tanakama holds that the fields at the outskirts of the city are Lo Mizdavni, and then what is it that Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel is adding? Basra, Shimon ben Gamliel Lememar, Afilu Bagi, Nam Mizdavni. So one way or the other, we're able to explain our Mishnah to make the Tanakama and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel make sense. Either it's like we initially said, that the Beis HaShlachin of the Tanakama was talking about land, and the only machlokas between the Tanakama and Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar is about the Bar Machvanisa, or the Beis HaShlachin of our Mishnah is talking about a garden, and then their machlokas is about santar being a bagi, and that also works out well, where the Tanakama excludes and the the Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel includes. I know this is nuanced. You can go back and listen to the recordings if you need, a little bit of a difficult piece of Gemara. But then we're going to learn the same. It's going to sound quite similar, but in nuance, it's not the same. Ika de Amre, some say that when we quoted our Mishnah a few lines ago, the Tanan, that's 5-6 lines down from when we started to ask our question to figure out whether or not santar is bagi or santar is bar machvanisa, perhaps we could approach this differently. 3 lines from the bottom. Ika de Amre, there are those who say, Savru amai shlachin ginu naisa. Perhaps our initial Havamina was our second Havamina in the first version, which is that when the Tanakama said Beis HaShlachin, he meant gardens. And Bishlam Alaman to Amar that the word santar means bagi. And if that's true, then Tanakama, Amar Tanakama Ginu Naisa Mizdabin Bagi Lo Mizdabin, that a garden is part of the sale, but the fields at the outskirts of the city are not. The Asa Rash Bagla Meimar Afilu Bagi Mizdabni. And that their machlokes is about bagi. As long as Beis HaShlachin means gardens, you're good to go. So that I understand. Ela Lemanda Amar, according to the one top of Maseches and Beis, we're going to be heading either to the Mishnah or close to the Mishnah. I'll let you know when we get there. Ela Lemanda Amar Bar Machvanisa, according to the one who's of the opinion that the word santar of Rashbag in our Mishnah means Bar Machvanisa, the person who's the surveyor. So then Omar Tanakama Ginu Naisa, the Tanakama spoke about Beis HaShlachin, and then what did Rab Shimon ben Gamliel say in response? Umahadil Rab Shimon ben Gamliel Bar Machvanisa. They're not even talking about the same topic. The Tanakama is talking about gardens, and Rab Shimon ben Gamliel saying also the survey. That's not a machlokas. You guys aren't even talking about the same thing. Who says there's even a machlokas? So says the Gemara, Mi Sabris Mai Shlachin Ginu Naisa. I disagree with you, and the Gemara inverts to what? It flips everything on its head. Lo, my shlachin bagi. Really, the word shlachin of the Tanakama, when he says that Beis HaShlachin is included in the sale, he's referring to bagi. He's referring to fields. Dichsi v'sholech ma'im al pnei chutzos, and therefore we know that Beis HaShlachin is talking about fields. Aval bar machvanisa lo mizdavein. But according to the Tanakama, if we say that shlachin is referring to fields, then really what's the diuk from there? The Tanakama excludes the surveyor. And therefore, V'asar Reb Shimon ben Gamliel L'meimar Da'afilu bar machvanisa nami mizdavin. So there's 2 versions as to how we approach this. The conclusions are the same, which is that the machlokes between the Tanakama and Reb Shimon ben Gamliel is either about whether or not we include the surveyor or whether or not we include the land. It's not both. It's one or the other. That brings us to a Tashma, 6-7 lines down on Maseches Amud Beis. Tashma, we're still trying to figure out what's going on here. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Santar Eino Machor. Clearly in the face of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Maybe he's our Tanakama. Could be. However, an kulmus Machor. However, there's a particular scribe, a sofer, who is included. My lav mida an kulmus gabra, that the person who is an an kulmus, he's a person. Shouldn't it also be the case that a santar nami gabra, that a santar should also be a person, and therefore it's referring to the surveyor? This is our second general approach to try and figure out what the word santar means. And over here, it's kind of like, are these both apples, or are they apples and oranges? If you're saying that the Ankulmos is a person, why wouldn't the Santar be a person? So the Gemara says, why do they have to be the same type? Midi Iria. Is that really the right way to look at it? Hakidi Isa, Hakidi Isa. They could be just two different things. Rabbi Huda could say that a Santar is a Machor. It could just be that he's saying fields are not Machor, but the scribe is Machor. So it doesn't have to be that way. Says the Gemara, you can't leave that impression to be true, because what you're effectively saying is that the Santar, according to Rabbi Huda, is talking about fields. That can't be, because Vaktani Seifa, we have a Seifa of a Brisa, and what does it say in the Seifa of the Brisa? Avalo Shaire, we don't know what the word Shaire means yet. What is not included in the sale is a Shaire. Velo Benose, talking about the suburbs. Benose is the daughters of the city, namely the suburbs of the city. Velo Chorshen Hamuktzin La, and not the fields or forests that are dedicated to those cities. Below Barin Shel Chaya, Vishel Ophos, Vishel Dagan, and not the containers, the aquarium that holds either the animals or the birds or the fish. And Amrinan, when we analyze this brisa, my shaire, what does the word shaire mean? Because we said in the seifa of this brisa, avalo shaire, shaire is not included. What is not included? What's shaire? Says the Gemara, no problem. Bizle, which is really not helpful because we don't know what that word means either. So then the Gemara says, my bizle. Even the Gemara didn't know what it was. You should feel good about yourself when you sometimes don't know a word in the Gemara. Sometimes the people in the Gemara are like, what are you talking about, Bislam? What's bizle? So Amar Rabbi Abba, Piske Bagi. Piske Bagi is a reference to properties that are very small. They're very choppy pieces of material, of field. You may own them. You may own them, but they're like, 6 feet by 4 in the shape of an amoeba. They're hard to work with. So these fields is what he means that are not included in the sale. And what's the diuk? Piske bagi hu de lo mizdabne. I understand these small, difficult to use fields are not included in the sale. Habagi atzman, but the large fields themselves are sold, which means that Rabbi Yehuda can't say that Santar is a field. Because Rabbi Yehuda holds that Santar is not sold, but he holds that a field is sold. So that's a stira. So you can't say in Rabbi Yehuda that the Santar is referring to land. So says the Gemara, you're right, Epuch. I should switch the shitas. I should switch the shitas to say Rabbi Yehuda Omer Santar Machor like Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, and Unkulmos Eino Machor. I should switch the shitas. That would work. Yes, it would work with Rabbi Yehuda, but it causes for another problem. The problem that it causes, and we're halfway down on Maseches Amud Beis, is that Umi Matzis Amris Rabbi Yehuda Kerashbag Svirale. It's not true that Rabbi Yehuda holds like Rashbag. We'll see where they disagree in a moment. Rabbi Yehuda Kirabonon Svirale. Rabbi Yehuda Taka holds like the Tanakama and not like Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar in certain areas. The Ketani Seifa, like we saw in the Seifa, Avalo Shaire. Like we saw that in the Seifa, it says that what is not included in the sale is Shaire, and the suburbs are not included either. Bila Rashbag, but according to Rashbag, Ha'amar, Mochar Esair, Mochar Benose. He does say that the suburbs are included. The Tanya, Mochar Esair, Lo Mochar Es Benose, the Tanakama. Rashbag, Omer, Mochar Esair, Mochar Benose. So therefore, we see Reb Yehuda and Reb Shimon ben Gamliel don't agree with each other. So says the Gemara, they agree in certain areas and they disagree in other areas. They agree, Rabbi Yehuda Savar la Kavase Bechada. They agree in regards to the fact that Santar is Machor, but they disagree in the other area of the suburbs. Upalagale Bechada. Good. That brings us to one last little sugya, and that'll take us to the Mishnah, and then we'll stop for tonight. If there are containers or aquaria that include in them chaya or oaf or dagim, so says the Gemara, we have a brisa that doesn't agree with that. What doesn't it agree with? Hayula banos, if there were suburbs, einin karosima, that's not for our sugya. Hayala chelek echad biyam, the chelek echad biyabasha. If you had a piece of property that was one part water to one part land, or, and this is where we come in, Beibarin shel chaya v'shel ofos v'shel dagim hareilim karima. So we have a stira. Our Mishnah said that the containers that hold the chaya, the ofos, and the dagim are excluded, but this brisa says they're included. Says the Gemara, lo kasha. Ha de nagich keihi legav. One is where the opening to the container is inward, then it would be included in the sale. The ha de nagiach keihi levar, and one is where the opening is facing outwards. Says the Gemara, hold on 1 second. V'hakatani, we already learned below es chorshen hamuksin la. We are excluding the fields that are connected to them. Nobody ever said which way the cities were facing as it relates to the forest. Why did you make that distinction? So you're right. Ema hamuksin heimena, only as it relates to those particular cities. But if the Ophos and the Dagim and the Beivarin were facing the city, then they would be included. Otherwise, they would be excluded. Again, very technical, difficult Gemara, worth doing some chazar to make sure everything is clear. Feel free to ask any questions. We'll stop right here, Mirza Hashem, tomorrow night. We will pick up with this stuff at the bottom of the page on Maseches and the base. Wishing you all a beautiful night.